And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Moving from Europe now to the Middle East, our live vantage point we always have there in southern Israel, looking into the Gaza Strip right now. So this is the news today. Hamas saying it has accepted a new proposal from Arab mediators for a ceasefire in Gaza, as Israel indicated its positions have not changed, while Gaza's health ministry said the Palestinian death toll from 22 months of war has passed 62,000. Fox News correspondent Jeff Paul with more.
Israeli forces continue preparations for a new ground operation centered on Gaza City. Ahead of the new operation, the IDF expected to redraft a significant number of reservists and move Palestinians in combat zones further south, though some say they won't leave their shelters, arguing there is no safe place in Gaza. But a new round of diplomacy is underway to end the fighting. Hamas has reportedly agreed to a new ceasefire proposal from Egypt and Qatar that would temporarily suspend military operations for 60 days. During that time, Hamas would release half of the living Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated that Israel remains open to a deal but would no longer accept a partial agreement.
Our continued security control over the Strip is just one of our conditions for ending the war, conditions that Hamas refuses to accept.
And he's facing mounting pressure to reach a deal. Over the weekend, more than 2 million people protested across Israel, arguing that a new ground operation in Gaza City could further endanger the hostages.
We are tired of war. We are tired of abandonment. We are tired of sacrifice. We demand one comprehensive deal to bring 50 hostages back home.
Of the 50 remaining hostages still being held by Hamas, Israeli officials believe that 20 are still living. In Tel Aviv, Jeff Paul, Fox News.
Jeff, thanks so much. I want to put up some reporting from Trey Yingst in the region saying Hamas has accepted an agreement that is close to the ceasefire terms previously discussed. Through pressure on Hamas to accept, Qatari and Egyptian mediators secured a breakthrough that preserves 98% of the Witkoff proposal, which the Israeli side had previously agreed to. That's what Fox is told by a diplomat briefed there on the talks. Yingst echoing what this diplomat added, saying this diplomat that this step opens the way to reaching a comprehensive agreement in the best possible manner without endangering the lives of the hostages through further intense military operations and avoiding a worsening of the humanitarian situation for the people of Gaza, who are already suffering greatly. In the meantime, though, let's bring into the conversation our friend there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's analyst, Ben Cohen. He joins me. Ben, thanks for being with us. So I was going to ask you this. It seems like Trey Yingst's reporting answer that, whether or not what Hamas agreed to and the Witkoff proposal were somewhat in alignment. This diplomat, Trey Yingst, says about 98% in alignment. So 2% off. What's that 2% that's off from it?
Well, we haven't yet seen the precise details of the plan that the Israelis are now considering that Hamas is reported to have accepted. But my guess would be that there would be some discussion there about the deployment of Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip. And some of the information that I've been getting talks about a short redeployment, some sense of withdrawal in northern and eastern Gaza. But I think Israel is going to absolutely want to retain control of some of the strategic arteries in Gaza, the Netzarim corridor, which runs through the center of the enclave, the Philadelphia corridor that runs along the border with Egypt. But as you say, Andrew, most of this is reminiscent of the Witkoff framework that was released in May. It talks about a 60-day ceasefire. It talks about the release of 10 hostages, 10 living hostages of the 20 who are still alive, and the release of the remains of those hostages who have been murdered. And it would also require Israel to release, my understanding is around 200 Palestinian prisoners currently serving sentences for terrorist offenses. And I understand that these are fairly serious players in the terrorism world, in the sense that they're serving sentences that range from 15 years through to life imprisonment.
Wow. So what's Netanyahu going to do? Has he indicated that he might accept what Hamas has accepted? Are they going to be on the same page or no?
Well, again, my understanding is that he's considering it. I'm not seeing a huge amount of, to be honest with you, Andrew, I'm not seeing a huge amount of enthusiasm for this plan coming out of the Israeli government. And I think that's partly because the Israeli government in recent weeks has pivoted its position from agreeing to a partial deal, as is the case with the Witkoff framework. You have a 60-day cessation of hostilities, followed by a longer-lasting ceasefire, followed by the installation of some kind of transitional authority in Gaza. Netanyahu has been saying that he now wants an end to the war that would see the release of all the hostages in one fell swoop. But I think increasingly he is seeing, he has in certainly in the last fortnight been emphasizing that this would be a military solution, principally around the IDF taking control of Gaza City, which is the last major stronghold of Hamas there.
But Ben, so yes, 2 weeks ago now, Netanyahu and his war cabinet voted to fully reoccupy Gaza City in a major military offensive. So if, say, both parties do reach an agreement on some type of deal, won't that thwart Netanyahu's attempt to, to your point, root out the last Hamas stronghold in Gaza City? Won't that be put on pause?
One would imagine that it would be, at least for 60 days. I mean, look, with the previous attempt at a ceasefire to follow along this spectrum, it was never seen through to completion. And I have, I think it's reasonable to expect, sadly, that we would be in the same situation here. I think what's different now domestically in Israel is that Netanyahu is under a lot more pressure. We saw in your report there more than 1 million Israelis taking part in a nationwide strike yesterday, on Sunday, and emphasizing that for them, victory in this war is meaningless without the release of the hostages. So there is a lot of domestic pressure on Netanyahu, which I think was not as pronounced, say, 2 or 3 months ago. Ditto with international pressure. The European Union is becoming frostier towards Israel, and some might say that the White House is really the last, for the time being, reliable ally that Israel has.
Yeah, Trump today saying this on Truth Social: "We will only see the return of the remaining hostages when Hamas is confronted and destroyed," saying the sooner this takes place, the better the chances of success will be. You mentioned the Israeli body politic and the outpouring of the support for the hostage cause in the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem over the weekend. It doesn't seem like they will abide by a partial ceasefire either. They want all the hostages, living and dead, home now.
They do, but I think many of them would accept a partial deal that allowed for the release of half of the hostages. I mean, look, I think this has been one of the, in terms of Israel as a society, this hostage crisis has been one of the most traumatic events in the 80-odd years that this country has existed. And I think, you have to remember, Andrew, that in the last 2 weeks, we saw some horrifying images of one hostage, Eviatar David, in a tunnel in Gaza, barely able to stand up in the space that he was in, being forced, completely emaciated, and being forced to dig his own grave. Yeah. So I think, when ordinary Israelis are reminded of that image, they may not like, completely understandably, the idea of a deal where they don't get all the hostages at once, but they may take part. They may take still a partial release as better than nothing.
But Ben, if Netanyahu agrees to a partial deal, doesn't that undercut his message that Hamas needs to be completely destroyed and extirpated from the Gaza Strip? Because any plans to that effect would be on hold, would have to be paused. So where does that put Israel's leverage in here? They've had the momentum in this task to reoccupy fully the city of Gaza City. But does that undercut the message there Netanyahu is trying to convey, that we will not stop this war until Hamas is no longer here. If they accept partially a deal, is there a contradiction there? I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, there is, because under the framework that you're describing, Hamas would remain in Gaza and would retain control of Gaza. Of course, this is a terrorist organization that's been greatly weakened over the last 2 years, not just in terms of the way that its own fighting force has been attacked and destroyed by the IDF, but by the fact that the regional context has completely transformed. Hamas's main ally has been Iran. Iran is now humbled, its nuclear program in tatters. Hezbollah, which presented a very important threat to the north that would bolster the Hamas threat from the south, that is really a shadow of what it was 2 years ago. So I think as well there is a lot of pressure on Hamas. And I think one of the reasons for the ambiguity in the Israeli position, because as you say, there is potentially a contradiction here. But I think one of the things that Netanyahu and his cabinet colleagues have been banking on is that the threat of an Israeli offensive against Gaza City, given the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and given the fact that there is financial, military pressure, a diplomatic pressure on Hamas, that would persuade them to back down.
I see. All right. Ben Cohen, we'll just have to wait and see whether or not Israel accepts what Hamas has accepted here. Thanks so much for your time. Talk soon.
Always a pleasure, Andrew.
Okay, in the meantime here, let's take our final commercial break of this hour. So had to get all of those key international headlines in. But like I said, today of all days, Monday, we have a lot more top headlines to get to. We'll get to them after this break.